Hey everybody, Lisa along with Cade, and we are coming to you today from the chamber.
Where the love of music echoes through space and time.
And we have got two, we're just going to call you guys studio experts because that's the bottom line. Because you've done everything, produce everything, right?
Pretty close to everything.
Okay, joining us today, Steve Durr and Chad Hailey. Guys, let's get started.
Follow me to the church.
Okay, Steve Durr, Chad Hailey, you guys came to us today from Nashville. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
Glad to be here.
It's an honor to be here.
Yeah. I described you guys as studio experts. Chad, starting with you, just tell me kind of a little bit about your background. Your name is known all around Tulsa. The Tulsa Sound guys, they know.
I hope it's not in the post office.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly where it is.
No. I've heard your name for years.
When'd you get out?
4:00. Well, how far back? I mean, how far do you want to start, or just like how I got started, or something, or something like that?
What do you do now? What is it you do now?
Well, if I'm not actually making a record with an artist, then I'm working on studios for other, mostly, I would say, boutique artists or projects.
Oh, very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. I've the way I describe it is I've never had a resume. I just kind of go from one to another, because when one stops, another one starts, and so on and so forth. And so I've kind of done that for, I don't know, 40 years or something.
Yeah. Steve, what about you? You guys work together on a daily basis?
Sometimes not much. I mean, we do in a sense of we're constantly communicating with each other, but we sort of go different directions and come back. I'm more involved in the actual acoustics, in the construction and design of recording studios, and Chad is a brilliant technical mind.
Yes.
And so,
That's very kind. Thank
I need that $20. and so
you take a check.
Let me hold your wallet till Friday.
Okay. Let me hold it down. Our lives intermesh quite beautifully, because I don't get into what he gets into, and he has a great deal of knowledge that he shares with me about what I do, so it really works out very well.
Yeah. Well, we're so glad to have you here, and we know that you're here on behalf of the church studios, and Teresa Knox only gets the best, so we know you're the best. But just tell us, you guys are you're serving as the experts behind the church studio, which is going to be a world-renowned studio when she's done, correct? And you're helping her get there. So what is it like putting that church studio back together?
It's a lot of responsibility, which we don't take lightly, but we absolutely cherish those moments in time, because in the days that studios were of like the church studio or Muscle Shoals or Fame or one of those studios, the vibe was built in. And now the studios, some of them look like dentist office, some of them look like doctor's office.
Absolutely.
They don't have any vibe. And from our perspective, vibe is everything. And so it's easier in this sense that we didn't have to create that vibe. Mm-hmm. It's there. We do create. I mean, every one of our studios that Matt and I design are completely different and unique, because we find out from the artist or whoever's building it what their expectations are. But it all comes down to lighting. It all comes down to artwork. It comes down to what it feels like to be in that space. And you want to create a space that nobody wants to leave, because that's the way the older studios were, don't you think?
I think it's a nail on the head.
Yeah, I mean, just like it's so easy to do because the vibe's already there.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's a lot of responsibility, because we have to be able to move the modern technology into it without destroying what made it wonderful at the time. So we're taking the best of the old world and we're converting that with the best of the new world, and sort of marrying those two things together. So we end up with something that's competitive and special, but at the same time keeps that whole emotion of what that space was about.
Yeah. You recorded, or you were around during the church studio when Leon was around, right, Chad?
I was around, but I was not
involved
so much with that.
What's it like working on this project now?
It's just like, waking up in a candy store every day. It's like
we're having a great time with it.
I mean,
but we take it very seriously.
We really love what we do, and we love music. And,
can't wait to go to work.
Can't wait to go
every
to work.
day. I wake up like, oh man, today we're going to do this,
And it's really fun for me because someday I'll wake up and I'll work on something for a few days and then I'll go take a break away from it and I'll go back and look at it and I'll go, I don't believe I did that. I missed that, So you get so focused on something.
What are you going to do differently, like at the church studio, that you haven't done in other studios, Chad?
Nothing, I hope. Yeah. Nothing, I hope. Yeah.
Really?
It'll be.
We want to go back to where it was.
What we do, or at least the way I look at it, and you may look at it similarly, I don't know. I take every place I've ever been and every studio I've ever worked in, and I go, I like that worked. I like that worked. Mm-hmm. So everyone that comes after the last one has got some of all of those places that you've worked and been. And the thing about studios is they're so unique. It's like Steve said, even if you tried to build them the same, it doesn't work because they're not the same. And creative people, they're so creative, the artists that work in them, the technical people, the runners, everybody that works in the studio environment loves what they do. It's not like you go to the store and somebody's having a bad day. Even a bad day in a studio is a great day.
Yeah, that's true.
And so you take, all of those brilliant things that you've learned or shared, gleaned off on the way, and you try and implement that into what you're doing to make it, studios should be ergonomic, and that's why you have a lot of artists that have studios in their living room because they just leave everything set up. They just leave it where
walk in and work.
That's
they
true,
just
Kate.
Absolutely,
they just walk in and work. And I could get really in depth on kind of what killed Nashville studios there for a moment or two, and it had all to do with just being able to walk into there were studios in Nashville that literally had galvanized pipe on the wall, and the microphones had not been moved in 20 years in Columbia Beach.
Oh, that's right.
They wouldn't. Yeah. There's a story. The story about Billy Sherrill, who's a really great producer in Nashville, and he went on vacation, and the girl, I don't remember her name because I can't remember it now. I know, but she thought it'd be
cute.
I'm not.
Don't tell me.
I'm
she's
not
going to
answer.
clean the place up.
She cleaned. Then I'll tell you. Then I'll relate. Then I'll relate this to a Cale story.
Okay.
I'll relate this to it, and that makes it here in So she decided to have the curtains dry cleaned in Columbia, in the Quonset hut, where George, Tammy. I mean, there's just there's no Dylan, there's no end to it. And so he came back from vacation, and he had a session booked, and he's in the control room. And I think it was Snake or Fast Eddie. I don't remember who it was. The engineer that was working on it, and they did a playback, and he lost his mind. They said because he said it doesn't sound right, and he found out that clean the curtains. So fast forward that this is kind of cute, and you'd think, well, that's a strange thing. Well, no, not really.
It's true.
So when John moved to Los Angeles,
and you're talking about JJ Cale.
I'm
Those
sorry.
that know him call him John. Yeah.
Cale. When Cale moved to Los Angeles, he moved to that rehearsal studio called The Alley, and it was at 5535 and a half Lankershim Boulevard in North Hollywood, across from Leon's Old Paradise that was up on Magnolia, I believe, just up the street. So he had an Auditronics 601 consoles made in Memphis, Tennessee, and by a guy named Weldon Jeton, I think.
Weldon Jeton
was his name. Anyway.
My first console, too.
There were two of them. Cale had one in his house on Old Hickory Lake, and Audie had one. Audie Ashworth, his producer, had one at Crazy Mama's, which was over in Green Hills area on Belmont. Well, so the Crazy Mama's console stayed, but Cale took all of his gear with him, brought it to California, and I took it in this rehearsal studio, and it was a long rectangular building with no rooms. It was just one square long building.
Oh no!
And so we stacked like a upright piano and some boxes and an equipment rack, and made a pass through just wide enough for you to walk through. And then we set up Karstein's drum kit, and then we set up Nick Rather's bass rig, and then there was a piano on the other end, and Christine kind of sat down there on that end to do her guitar and piano stuff. And Cale sat direct, like if that piece right here was Karstein's kick drum head, Cale would sit right here just looking at him like that. And it was the weirdest setup in the world. That is weird. What has that got to do with dry cleaning the curtains at Columbia Beach? So
you're going to tie it in, I know
we had been working, And everybody was kind of getting tired, and so John decided he wanted to go, on a day trip or a weekend trip or something like that. Cale decided. So he loads up the Elephant, we used to call it. He had a motorhome, and he spent a lot of time in his motorhome.
He always had a motorhome.
Oh, always. So he loaded up in the motorhome, and he and Christine took off, and everybody else went, touristing and whatever. Karstine went to visit his buddies and all that stuff. So I didn't really, I was really young, and I didn't really have that much, going on in Hollywood at that time. So I decided I would just stay at the studio and just, work on stuff. So I took the faders apart in the console, and I found faders are the knobs you slide up and down to control the level of sound. And so I took them apart, and I thought it'd be a good idea if I cleaned them because, they were kind of scratchy, like that. And so I had a little plastic 3M tape container, and I put all the junk and shit I found down in the fader wells in that, and I was so proud of myself. There was change. There's probably $1 worth of coin. there were razor blades, because you used razor blades to cut splice analog tape back in the day.
50 packs of cigarettes.
There was so much ashes, because at the time nobody, smoking wasn't a thing, And so I had cleaned it up, and I lubricated it and sprayed it, and I put it all back together, and I put a tape on, and I was listening to it. I thought, man, that is so nice. Because I would, if I adjusted something while he was playing and it did that, it wasn't a good. It was
the mics would pick it up. Right?
Oh yeah, it was just not good.
That's not good.
And so I thought I did something really good. Well, he comes in that Monday. I did that over the weekend. He came in Monday, and John was an engineer himself, and he liked to piddle around and stuff. So he wanted to come in and sit and do something that he was working on or some such. And I was not at the studio that day yet. I hadn't gotten there yet. And he called me. He was like, "What have you done?" And so I said, "Oh no." So he said, "You need to get down here." And I'm like, "Okay, I'll come down there." So I walk in the door, and he says, "What did you do? What did you do to the console, man?" I said, "Well, I did." And I reached over and I got the thing, and I showed him all the grunge and shit that I cleaned out of the faders. And he said, he used to pull his collar all the time. He said, "Oh, don't ever do that again. Don't ever do it. You fucked with my sound, man." And he was dead.
It sounded just like it.
And
actually.
he was, I could do it, but I don't. He was dead serious. I mean, that was.
Oh, I know. I've heard other stories.
And that's just the beginning of it. I mean, that's what I can repeat. But it was like, so the curtains and the faders, in everything that you do, that you alter, that it's all a very happy accident. There's no telling. Rooms that you go in that are real, shiny and polished and marbly and whatever are just not.
You can't trust those.
You can't.
No, you can't.
You can't.
You don't need that.
You can't have any fun in those rooms.
Yeah.
We used to say, I've had people that say, I like this place. One of the rooms I worked in back in Nashville, they say, "Man, I really like this place because it looks like you come here to work. There's wires everywhere. There's boxes everywhere. There's instruments everywhere. There's, and a guy would say, "I'm not afraid to set my drink down on the piano. I'm not afraid to put a cigarette out on the floor or something like that." And it's like, that's the deal.
That's really exciting for me to hear from you guys, because it sounds like you have a really good connection between studio design and actual music making, which is kind of the main function of a studio. I know exactly what it feels like to walk in a space that feels like a dental office. It's like, I don't feel like making Back in Black by AC/DC in here.
No.
It's like, it's not going to come out of here. So that's super cool to hear about that.
No, because we grew up doing this, not looking at a screen. And it's
making
just
records on TV.
If you're sitting in a restaurant and there's TVs in there, you're going to look at that television set. You know? And that eats up half your brain. Was like, if it's a ball game or something, it's the same thing. You're looking at Pro Tools. You watch the darn screen going up and down. The next thing you know, that's all you're concentrating on, and you've missed the whole experience.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because I've gotten into a habit of literally turning off my monitor when I'm mixing.
Absolutely.
Even just for moments, just to check. And it's weird how all of a sudden something becomes so evident. Like, wow, how did I not notice that
that's exactly
this whole time?
Right.
Something about seeing the waveforms or the meters, it doesn't even matter what's up there, just the screen. If I go to my desktop, if I just go to the desktop, all of a sudden I hear all this stuff that's like, it's all ears. All of a sudden I've disengaged the visual aspect of it. Yeah, so that's super cool that you bring that up.
It's very true.
I make records under Christmas lights.
Really?
Yeah, we do too. Hell yeah.
String lights up. With
Christmas lights.
Yeah,
all
that's
over
super
everywhere.
vibey.
And then just turn everything else off.
Yeah.
And I do
And,
think we've gotten a great team on
man.
this church studio.
Oh, man.
You know, I couldn't be happier with where we're going with it.
From zero
because
up.
we'd be jumping up and down like a shortstop at this point, going, but it's actually fallen into place quite nicely.
Well,
sorry.
Sorry to interrupt, but we're from Tulsa. We've driven up and down 3rd Street, a million times in our lives. We knew that was the old church studio. We take it for granted, probably, but it's a big deal.
It's a big deal. Oh, trust me, we don't take it lightly.
No.
I mean, we really don't. And Teresa's been unbelievably cool
I know
about
that.
it,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just really been supportive, and we come to her with goofy ass ideas. That's a great idea.
She's up
Okay,
for a
good.
lot.
Well, you may have some goofy ass ideas.
Well, I do. My ideas are really goofy. I think out of the box all the time.
I'm kidding.
Well, what about that big? There have been a lot of churches that have been converted into studios.
They have.
But with that big room in there, is that a challenge? How is that going to be different?
No, it's actually wonderful.
It's wonderful.
In what way?
Because there's not a lot of those studios left. They've been torn down. When RCA was in Nashville, which is a huge studio, about the same size, really famous, same group of people recorded there. I was interviewed on National Public Radio from some jerk off from New York, and can I say that?
Yeah.
Is that his,
I think
is
you
that his
said
official
more.
title?
Go
He
ahead,
was
Steve,
actually
you've
really
said more.
nice, but he said to me, he said, so why is this a big deal? Why don't they tear this thing down? Can't you just go across the street and build another one? And I said, well, you probably could with bricks and mortar, but the people that have recorded in this room left all of their energy and all their emotion in this room, and it's stuck in these walls. And when you walk in that space, you can feel that. When you walk in the church studio, you can feel that energy in that
Gives you
room.
goosebumps, doesn't it?
It makes you really proud to be associated with the project.
Absolutely.
Well, and it's on the National List
Yeah,
of Historic Places,
it
National
should be.
Registry.
It should be.
It's
interesting,
real.
though. When we first started working on it, I'd obviously heard about it, but I wasn't really familiar. And people came out of the woodwork that told me they worked there. One of my friends, Alan Schulman, who died a couple of months ago, great engineer. He got his start in that studio and lived in one of Leon's houses.
Yeah.
There. And
I never knew that. I didn't know.
I didn't either. We were having some conversation.
Who hasn't lived with Leon?
Yeah. That's true too. Well, Rex Collier is another guy, the guy that gave me my first job in Nashville. I was telling him what we were doing. Oh, I was Leon's engineer for like 10 years.
Right.
I was just crazy how much attachment there was to that,
Yeah.
It even goes deeper than that, because when Teresa and I were looking, what was it, the tape machine or something, and it had some the Studer.
Teresa Knox in the studio from the chamber.
I'm looking over there.
Was Teresa here? Oh, hey,
Yeah,
Teresa, how are you?
She's over by the bartender if you drink it. So if you need a drink, that's John Moss.
We definitely got a bartender. Excuse me.
Yeah, he's barkeep. He's
I'll
barkeep.
fill up that whiskey for you. Or the vodka. Yeah.
The Harweldon Mansion, located in Tulsa, Oklahoma, is your choice for a luxury destination bed and breakfast. Stunning and unique, beautifully decorated suites await you for your business or leisure. Constructed in the 1920s, the historic Harweldon Mansion boasts elegant and comfortable accommodations, Egyptian cotton towels, Peacock Alley linens, and Hermes bath products. All rooms stocked with complimentary beer, wine, tea, coffee, and soda. And you'll appreciate the welcome snack and turn-down service, minutes from the world-renowned gathering place. Book your overnight stay at harweldonmansion.com. That's HARWELDEN mansion.com.
Everything that we do just makes the hair on your arm stand up, because it's such karma that it's all coming together, and it's meant to be. I mean, it's just. I mean, without you though, it would not be at all.
Thank you.
Thank you for doing this.
Exactly.
But I don't
For saving it.
Cheers.
And trusting us. Cheers.
I really
And
John
trusting
Moss.
us.
Okay.
Oh, wait.
Okay.
I really don't think
Sorry, man.
that we've really
You got a high pass on this thing?
realized how cool it's going to be when it's done. You know, some mornings I wake up and I think about what I'm going to work on that day, or what, in the timeline of things that need to be done. And then some days I just wake up and I go, I can't believe that we're doing this. We're working on a fabulous old Neve 8068 console that was once owned by Daniel Lanois and used on Dylan's record. Neil Young's La Noise, U2 recorded through it. I mean, it's just a great old desk, but it needed some love and attention. And at the time, I was in San Francisco
thank you, Matt.
working on a project, and we thought
knew
it would
it was
be
the reason we
better
brought you.
to bring it to San Francisco so that I didn't have to go back and forth and this and that and the other. Well,
Yeah.
anyway, to make a long story short, you wake up and it's kind of like building an airplane, because you got these great guys here, the architects and the builders here. Then you've got Jeff Penn, who's my guy that's working on the console in San Francisco. And then I'm building things in Nashville.
Yeah.
And at some point it's all going to converge and it's all going to work. And it's just like, it's very cool.
We're thrilled.
Yeah.
Yeah, the contractor's a good guy.
Yeah,
he really cares. He really
does.
believes it.
Yeah.
We've got him believing it.
Yeah.
Hey, watch this.
I heard about the Neve console. I heard about the Studer tape machine. Teresa's kind of kept me a little bit in the loop about some of the other pieces of gear, the U47 and the V76 preamps. And I'm like, this is like god tier gear here.
Yeah.
Well, if you walk into Sunset Sound or East West, which was Ocean Way, which was United Western, which was Western, these grand old studios, Capitol,
Sears Sound,
the Hit Factory,
Electric
Lady Hit Factory, our buddies down in Miami at Criterion Crescent Moon. You'll see this stuff, and granted that the Studer and the Neve were an effort to pay homage to Leon in the 70s and the work that he did in the format that he did it on, I don't know. And in addition to that, we're going to have like the killer Pro Tools rig with all the Burl interfaces, and you'll be able to go to analog and digital at the same time. You'll be able to go to analog and then go to digital. You'll be able to go to digital and go to analog. So all those aspects of the modern interconnections to be able to make people comfortable in their whatever format they're comfortable working in. And the gear, going back to the other great studios, Sunset hadn't changed the paint since the 70s in Studio One. I mean, if it's good, leave it. Mm-hmm. If it, just get it to where it's really pristine, and you don't need all of this technology to make a record.
Absolutely.
Sheryl Crow can make a record in her basement, right?
A lot of people did.
Tom Petty make a record in his garage. What this does is make it absolutely the most fun it can possibly be. Because you can if you have these great old pieces to augment the new pieces, and you can't make a record, it's not the room.
It's not the equipment's fault.
Not the equipment. It's not the room.
So that sounds like that's kind of your approach to the analog side of things. If it's not broken, don't fix it. This stuff makes great, beautiful sounding records we love to hear. And then there's digital that does other great things. To me, I've never viewed digital as a sort of replacement. Like a lot of people would like it to be. Digital is like this whole new technology, this whole new tools that do different things. And ultimately, the best is to do what you guys are doing, is to have both at your fingertips. It's like you can't outdo that by taking the best of both worlds.
Well, it's correct in what you say about that. And the thing about that is when you got two old geezers like us,
one old geezer.
Yeah, one old geezer. You're able to get that, and modern design and modern folks that do it they don't necessarily, it's like, I don't want to go to a bald barber.
That's a great analogy.
I just,
I never thought of that.
And the thing about it that makes it so much fun is that in the old days, in the early days of recording, a lot of the guys were radio telephone engineers that worked for broadcast companies. That
Pretty much everybody.
Oh, okay, cool.
That took care of transmitters, and they, when it went down, they had to repair it.
Yeah.
There are a lot of mixers in the world, engineers in the world. There's some of the greatest, way above my pay grade, that walk in, and if something breaks, they have to stop. And I grew up and I didn't have the luxury to do that. So I had a little bit of an edge because I knew sort of enough to kind of piece it together and get it going.
Yeah, that's super cool.
And whatever. And the thing about it, and John, I asked Cale one time, we were having a conversation at the Belly Up Club in Southern California. And we were coming up on going to do another project somewhere, and I think up at Warner's in Hollywood. Anyway, Bill Boatman was in the conversation.
Tulsa.
Billy Morrow Boatman, fabulous guitar player.
It's right down here.
2 blocks. Fabulous guitar player. Anyway, he looked at me one day and he said to me, he said, "Kid," he said, "why do you want to do this?" He said, "You look like you need to be behind a desk." They call me kid because I was working. And then John heard that or something, and Audie heard it, and they said, "No, leave him alone. He's okay," or whatever. And then I asked Cale, I said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, Bowman's got a good point." He said, "Why do you want to work with me when you've worked with Glenn Johns and you've worked with Snake Reynolds and you've worked with Joe Mills and you've worked with all of these fabulous engineers?"
I forgot about Joe Mills.
Joe Mills is the proudest part. He said, "Oh, kid, it's simple." He said, "Oh, you're not a frustrated drummer." And I said, "What does that mean, John?" He said, "You don't mess my sound up." He said, "You just record what you hear." Because I don't play music.
That's a great compliment.
Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't play any instruments at all.
Straight up his alley.
And people don't hire me to play music. They hire me to listen.
To capture it.
To capture it, and capture it unadulterated, not with what I want it to sound like, what I want it to be EQ'd like, what I want, I heard a record and I'm going to make it sound like that. They want, when they play it in the room and they come back in the control room, they hear it the same way. That's how I've been able to still be doing what I'm doing.
Great point.
Steve, real quick, what about the echo chamber? There's going to be 2 at the church. Is that common?
We scratched it.
No, you didn't.
We got to undo this whole podcast now.
Maybe you haven't told Teresa yet.
Well, the
whole thing's in shambles.
I'm glad you told me that. Now we got here.
Saves a lot of money. The chambers are a really odd animal because it's essentially exactly what it's called, is a reverb chamber. So the walls are all cantered, and I've built a lot of them. Some of them sound really good. Some of them sound unbelievable, and some of them make you cry. I did Willie's studio in Austin, and they brought in some guy from Brazil to tile the whole inside of it with this tile that he brought from Brazil. I mean, they flew a whole airplane full of tile, and they tiled the whole thing in, and it sounded awful. It was really weird. And so,
but it looked pretty.
It looked spectacular.
That's all that really
There's
counts.
Some woman
Get
behind
the
that.
photo and then take it down. Take down all the tiles afterwards.
Yeah. No, what happened was I went down there, and the studio smelled horrible. I'm like, what in God's name is this smell? And somebody opened the door, and they were making deer jerky. And they had used that chamber, and all these dead deer carcasses were hanging in the damn chamber. Yeah, that was about $50,000 worth of deer towel.
A deer tile.
Yeah,
it's a really, really dead sound.
It was really dead sound.
Yeah, there you go. That's a good one.
So to answer your question, what we're doing is we've traveled around and looked at a lot of different chambers, and we've discovered some things that are really unique. For the ones that really sounded good. The ones that were really famous, obviously, are in Capitol.
Yeah.
And Chad sent me a picture a couple of days ago of the speakers that they actually used in there. And it was like a slap in the face. I don't know why I didn't think of that myself. But it was, what's his name, the guitar player?
Les Paul.
So we can't remember names for the shit. And
takes a village to put a
and the
snitch
speakers
together.
he used were totally unique for that space. It really didn't. It never dawned on me.
And the other thing that I didn't even think about either. The chambers at Sunset are A7.
Oh, it made all the sense in the world.
Yeah, I mean,
from a standpoint. So the surfaces you put on the walls and the way the walls are angled and that sort of thing, you're trying to get as much beautiful reverb in a small space as you can, and every one of them is unique. And that's what made the studio sound the way they did, was that the chambers were all unique. None of them sounded even remotely the same. So yes, we're going to have 2. They're going to be completely different from each other. One from the other.
That's an interesting thing that you say, that they're unique. And the thing about it that this church will be as well. There was a time in music when I was growing up that you could put a vinyl record on, and you could tell what studio instantly
by the chamber,
what room it was recorded in.
Yeah,
you could in Nashville they would record at a studio called Woodland. You could hear that room.
That's the first room I ever worked in Nashville.
You could hear if they recorded the tracks there, and they went to the RCA facility because it was big and put strings on it, and you could hear that. And and people, money can't buy that.
Yeah.
There's no amount of money that we saw.
Well, the way that might be.
Now back
We
up.
saw
You can't.
what I mean by that
Because
is
you got to love that shit.
you have to
do it.
You have to love it to do it.
You got to
And
think about it from outside of just it's really not about money.
No.
You know?
We've seen.
It's a good thing.
We've
too,
seen people migrate from
2020
different places around the world to Nashville because it's a great place to live.
It is.
And they brought their, Brinks truck with them, and they built these monolithic studios, and they don't really sound good.
They don't sound good at all. That one in Franklin, well, I can't tell you the name.
Okay, well, speaking of that,
Yeah.
top 2 favorite studios you've worked in, each of you.
Mine,
Top 2, maybe 3.
my own.
Your own?
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
Does it have a name, Steve? Or
It's the showroom. It used to be because if you can't sing, we can't record, and that's really what it said on the card. But it's called the showroom now, and
It's a good room. It's a good.
in Nashville?
Yeah, it is. It really, for me, is exactly where I want to be. If you close your eyes, you'll swear that you're sitting in the middle of the band. And that's really what we're trying to get to. There's no evidence of loudspeakers. I grew up in the school. I thought that if it sounds like loudspeakers, it's wrong. Nobody goes to a concert to hear a PA system, and nobody tries to make a record on something that sounds like a loudspeaker. So honestly, if you want to come, I'd love for you to come. And the problem with it is that we build these studios. Matt and I design these studios so that nobody will leave. But unfortunately, when you have one in your backyard and nobody leaves, you're stuck with them at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning. And then you got to get somebody to Uber them home. And my neighbors come over and they stay for hours because you literally can close your eyes and swear that the Beatles are sitting in the room with you.
Wow.
And that's what we're trying to get to.
What's your
what
second favorite?
To work in?
What's your second
To work in?
work in that you like?
Oh,
you
work
love?
in. Oh, God. They're all so wonderful, don't you think?
Oh, I do.
The ones
Okay.
that we work in they're all unique. They're like a different,
they're all
like
different.
every one of them's completely different.
Do you have a
Fame has to be my second favorite, because it defies all logic.
Okay.
In Muscle Shoals, the control room there's no way to work. It sounds unbelievable.
What a documentary. Did you see it?
Yeah, oh yeah.
God, it was good.
good.
I know more about than I want to know. I
Yeah.
don't want to talk about. But Rick Hall and I were very good friends, and I went to the screening of the movie with him and his wife. But he was an unbelievably unique human being. He'd keep 2 drummers in the lobby, and if one of them wasn't getting it that day, Roger Hawkins was a drummer there, and he tells a famous story. He's working on Aretha Franklin record, and he was playing his heart out, and Rick pushed the button, and he thought, Rick's going to tell me how great a job I'm doing. He goes, Roger, you suck today. Why don't you go sit in the lobby and let Tommy come in and play? That kind of stuff. Rick was very blunt about where he was with things.
Yeah.
That was a great movie, though.
Yeah.
I was really
Loved it.
I cried through
Loved
most
it.
of it.
How about you, Chad?
Oh God. Well, let's see. Sunset Sound in.
But it's the vibe there.
Yeah.
Are you talking about on Sunset Ocean Way?
No, that's
No.
east
That's
west.
different? Okay.
That's at 6,000. Sunset is at 6050.
It's so
Sunset.
comfortable.
It's been there for 50 years.
Yeah,
And
it's so comfortable.
They haven't changed much in a long time. They're all custom consoles. There's a lovely Neve 8078 in the big room where they worked on so many hit records. Stairway to Heaven. I mean,
Oh, you name it.
I mean, you name
Yeah.
it. Anyway,
Prince.
Prince camped out in the Domitio API room for, I think, Craig Hubler, bless his heart, what a fabulous man. He's not with us anymore, but he had worked there for 36 years, I think, for the family that owned it. And Prince camped out there for like 7 years, where most of Purple Rain was done.
Wow.
And it's one of those rooms like RCA that you can hear it. You know, the room becomes an instrument.
It does.
You got a bass player, a drummer, a guitar player, and a singer, a piano player, and then you got the room. And if you don't have that, then it's not going to be great.
Sunset's the one. It's got the panels that can fold, and you can
fold
like
open.
shorten the decay and stuff.
That's one of the top ones. Of course, I would be just forgetful if I didn't mention the room in Nashville where I spent so much time, which incidentally was Cumberland Presbyterian Church.
Really?
It was originally when Fred Foster moved Monument to Nashville.
That's a great studio too.
He recorded Christofferson there. The Gatlin brothers did all the Golden California, Done Enough Dying Today, Broken Lady.
That's a great record.
Al Hurt recorded there. I recorded Eric Clapton there on Jamie's project. I recorded Peter Frampton there on Jamie's project. Tony Joe, I mean, all of these great people. And it was a labor of love. Fred had it for a number of years. two engineers that worked for him, Mort Thomas and Tommy Strong, bought it from Fred, and they changed the name to Studio One, because the Monument logo, they could just put one of those little things on the top. I don't know I'm not an English person, but and it was cheaper, than having a new logo design. And they recorded a bunch of stuff in there, a bunch of hits, and then they sold it. Tommy and Mort sold it to Chip Young, and Chip he did the Gordon Lightfoot records, Gatlin Brothers records, all that stuff. He was a great musician. He's not with us anymore.
Okay, this is kind of like the lightning round. Steve, your favorite artist you've worked with?
Favorite artist?
Yeah, one or two.
Oh God, all of them.
You said that about the studios, then you came down.
I really feel that way.
You haven't heard some of the artists.
I really feel that way. All of them. Any one of them that moves me. I grew up in New Orleans, and New Orleans is all emotional. Like Charleston, South Carolina is a beautiful Southern woman. New Orleans is like the best hooker on the planet. Yeah.
And don't we have
great comparison.
A room to build down there? What is that room?
What time is it? So you would go there, and everything was emotional. When you eat, it's emotional. I did the sound for the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival for 8 years, and it was everything about it was emotional. Every record I ever worked on there was, it just walked away from it with just the greatest feeling in the world. So all of them, every damn one of them. I used to get really frustrated with the artists in Nashville who, to me, don't have much talent. But you got to believe that somebody could move to Nashville and become a huge star, which is all their dreams come true. And that's so friggin' emotional, it's insane. I don't like their music, I don't care for it, but that's not important. What's important is they were able to move themselves into that position, whatever, and be able to become who they are. Some of them are great, but
I think that's a great segue into like what's your guys' vision for the church studio as far as the kind of artists and stuff you might see moving through there. Do you have a vision about maybe the kind of music that might be going on there based on the space and stuff?
I do. Do you?
A little bit.
People your age are gonna, once they're all the studios that we're building now are going back to, hey, you know what? Let's put this band in a room and let's have this emotional connection and let's have some tension of the performance. And we see this every day. I mean, Matt and I just built a studio for.
You keep referring to Matt. Matt's right over there.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
And he's your studio. He's a studio architect.
Yes,
right?
he and I work together.
Okay, yeah.
And we work very, very well together because.
And we're also working on the church studio.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He works on it more than I do.
Right.
Because he's answering what do you think about these nails? Well, these nails are fine. But seriously, you're building a guitar. It just happens to be as big as it is. It's a guitar. But every studio that we work on like that is from that standpoint of making music. We don't design. Yeah. We don't. When Chad first came to me with this idea, it's like, well, I really don't like to do vanity studios for people that don't understand what we're trying to do. Because if you can't communicate with someone, you can't meet their expectations, you certainly can't build them a studio.
Right.
I'm building them their work tools. So we spend a lot of time finding out what their expectations are, and we pass on ones that people who we don't go. So,
I was very hesitant to even come over here.
He goes, look, man, I don't know about this, but I got this this woman, and she wants to do something with this studio in Oklahoma. Okay, well, give me a little more input,
Yeah.
Because we just don't jump on something,
I came over here, and I fell in love with Ivan and Teresa immediately. And
I understand why you did.
We all have.
And I was just like,
human being
I
in the
just
world.
looked up, and I'm like going, are you kidding?
Yeah.
Really? Like, this is really going to happen? And these people are these fabulous people to begin with.
Right.
But,
very cool.
Yeah.
But their idea of promoting and being the custodian of this great piece of music history is phenomenal. I mean, we need more of you in the world.
Oh, we definitely do, especially this size. So to answer your question,
I'm sorry. I mean,
No. You're both.
So to answer your question, more people who are dealing with the music from an emotional standpoint will work there in a second. One of the things we talked about doing was maybe putting together like a Trent Jones deal where people would work in Fame and then come work here and then go work in different studios and offer them an opportunity to be able to go
idea.
and work in Sears Sound in New York, and because all these studios, I mean, Rick Hall told me he never made a dime in that studio until he did that movie. And then all of a sudden, he had his own publishing company. They made money, but he rented the studio. Didn't make a dime. Yeah, I'm sorry. Fame Studios, actually. Muscle Shoals is. We did that studio, and it's down the street, but it was an old washing machine place, and we put it back exactly like it was as well. And it's more of a museum. But Fame is a phenomenal recording studio, and now people come from Japan, from all over the world to work in that studio because of that situation. You can do that there. You can walk in that room and it'll absolutely freak you out how much energy is in that room. I mean, you think about the records that are made in there, you know. So we're very grateful, and we think that this we don't think this thing can fail. Plus, this woman's a brilliant marketing person.
No kidding.
Every time I open up something, it's like the church studio. I know, and it's not tacky.
Are they
it's
talking
very,
about
very
it in
well
Nashville?
done.
Are they talking about it? You know,
yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell you. People come to me and go, "You're working on the church studio?" Yeah, I am. You know?
Cool.
Yeah, it's really. I brag about it constantly.
Good.
Yeah, I do.
And as weird as it sounds, I think I probably shouldn't even say it. The COVID thing is probably couldn't have better timing.
That's next question.
Because I think with everyone being quarantined for so long,
what's coming out of it, Chad? What's happening
in the home studio? I mean, it's kind of weird. I think people your age and the younger people that are working in Pro Tools and
he's talking to Kate. He's not talking to me.
I think they're going to want to go get out of
couldn't agree with you more.
Get out of their home environment, home studio environments, and go work in larger rooms.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Today's episode is brought to you by the historic Harweldon Mansion, your choice for a luxury bed and breakfast experience, and the Church Studio, home to your favorite rock and roll t-shirt.
The Church Studio was the Abbey Road of America in the 1970s, when Rock and Roll Hall of Famer and Grammy Award-winning singer-songwriter and musician Leon Russell purchased a 100-year-old church and turned it into a recording studio and home office to Shelter Records. Now under significant renovation to bring it back to a recording studio, entertainment network, and community space. Get your church merch fixed today at thechurchstudio.com. Cool gear includes super soft t-shirts, hoodies, hats, journals, stickers, candles, and so much more. Thechurchstudio.com. We've kind of moved away weirdly over the last, I'd say, 20 years. The whole time I've been active to where...
You're not older than 20.
Every once in a while I have these sort of like, when I'm working, I'm like, wait, what am I doing here? Am I like creating a sound picture or am I capturing a moment? You know, you guys are creating spaces where you are capturing special moments.
Absolutely.
And you're
Never
and that's
again.
what it is. You're listening back to the special moment that was captured. You're not, pulling up samples and making drum machines or whatever.
We don't do
kind of,
beats.
Yeah, sure. I appreciate that.
And that's what I was saying earlier when we started this thing. I worked with a big name artist. I don't want to name drop, but
No, do it anyway.
Kanye West.
Pardon?
Wait.
Do it anyway.
Nah. And
Okay.
so we never were in the studio with Stevie Wonder that we didn't have a 2-track tape machine running all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Because you never knew when that magic moment was going to happen. And it would be stacks and stacks and stacks of 2-track tapes everywhere. But that never, ever was turned off. And that's what I say.
Cale either. Yeah.
Yeah. It ran all the time.
All of it just turned. If I'm in the building...
It's on.
It's
something,
running.
For Cale, it didn't matter what it was. He gave everybody one year when the Sony Walkmans came out, the very first ones. Everybody got a Sony Walkman, and he gave us a big load of tape, and he just encouraged everybody to just load the things up and just wherever you are.
Don't know.
Huh?
You just don't know.
You just don't know.
It may happen like boom,
you just don't know.
And once that happens, you can never do it the same way again. I don't care how many times you try.
You're
it's
right
going to
about
have
that.
some uniqueness to it. That's what Pro Tools beats all the life out of it.
I remember going into a studio with Cale, and it was a new place. I don't remember.
You're talking to JJ Cale, John Cale.
John Cale. And there was a young guy in there, and he was tweaking on the machine. Analog tape machines have to be aligned, and it's tones and a process. And he was tweaking on it, and he kept going back and forth. And John was kind of pacing around, and he was wanting to get on with his getting on. And I learned a very important phrase that day. He looked at the guy. He looked at me. So I said, "Okay." So I went over and I tried to kind of encourage him to, it kind of open him up to the artist is here and he wants some tape machine turned on, And Cale said, don't ever let your training interfere with your job. He wanted the machine to be perfect, but he couldn't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah, that's great.
Cale didn't want it to
lesson.
be perfect. He just wanted it while it was in his head to be recorded somewhere.
Yeah.
That's why he gave everybody Walkmans, because it's like you said, you never
Great
knew.
point.
So we can't take, you and I joke about not taking take yourself too seriously,
I don't joke about that. I'm real.
He means it. He's not kidding.
You can't be so rigid. You don't want to work. You don't want to work in a rigid environment.
I think it's all about
rigidity. Could be the decor. It could be the personnel. It could be, lack of maintenance. It could be you want things to, you want things to work smoothly so that you don't have to think about it. You think about only what is coming, out of here, or something like that.
Yeah, I think the important part is what I refer to as like momentum, the momentum obsession, where it's like you get this momentum going, and then some silly little technical issue happens, and it robs everything. And it's like it's not like even being a diva or being lazy. I'm always working on my workflow to try to set it up so that when I'm in that creative moment, the workflow, I get that momentum and nothing slows it down. There's no silly little having to add a track and it's not working and Pro Tools crashes and those kind of little things, they're not a big deal, but it is a big deal when you've really got that momentum. That's kind of what you're talking about with JJ.
Yeah.
The groove.
The groove.
Performance.
That's a good word.
Yeah, the groove.
The groove.
That's John, he referred to it as the groove.
The groove.
You worked with him, Chad. We talked a little bit before. I don't want to make you emotional.
No, it's all right.
Everyone here that talks about John that's, close friends with him, they all get emotional talking about him. But what a great guy. What a great person.
He was a stand-up guy.
He came to the church studios. You recorded there.
I didn't record Cale at the church studio.
Right. But he did, right, Teresa? Yeah.
Yeah. I know for a fact that he did.
He worked here.
What was it like working with JJ Cale, who Clapton referred to as not his muse, but no.
It was pretty much a life-changing experience for me because,
really?
I knew I wanted to do something in music from the time I was a little kid because I just thought it was so cool, to do that.
Got a lot of chicks too.
Yeah, yeah.
Just get down to the heart of the matter.
Let's just think if I could have played guitar, how much better it would have been.
Oh my God! If you could play guitar, man,
John
had to get your own apartment.
John was cool to work with because he was an experimenter.
Yeah.
There was no wrong way to do anything. So if you don't really know what you're doing, in the first 5 or 6 years, I really didn't know what I was doing, but I watched others and I emulated what they did until I finally kind of, by the grace of God, those that came before me shared their information with me, kind of figured it out a little bit.
I'm going to disagree with you there.
And he...
you did know what you were doing.
Thank you. He would let you try stuff, but just don't clean anything.
Don't try that.
I tried that once, and that was the last time I ever tried. But he was extraordinary to work with because he was he was all about, as you say, the groove and the vibe and the performance. Mm-hmm. So from a standpoint of when I started working for him as a teenager, I learned from the best, without a doubt. I didn't. He was phenomenal to sit and watch play and do things and scribble things out, and it was a really it was a time that was I cherish that time a lot. I could have I mean, if I had gotten onto some other kind of act or something, I wouldn't still be doing what I'm doing here. Nobody at the time besides Audie really knew how talented Cale was.
You're talking about Audie Ashworth, his producer. It was in Nashville.
I mean, he was good, and he had a unique sound, and he had a unique look, but nobody could have envisioned where his legacy would wind up. And to me, I didn't really think about it. It was just like, I work for this old guy.
Mm-hmm.
That's funny.
I remember when he'd walk out on stage, people would think he's just like one of the roadies setting up mics. And all of a sudden, he'd start playing.
Yeah, I mean, he would move. You'd do a sound check or something, and then he'd go over and move the microphone out of the spotlight after the guys had set the lights. He was crazy. He was just crazy like a fox.
Out of the spotlight.
Out of the spotlight. He was. I don't know. I mean, I'm almost out of words to describe what it was like to be around him on a lot. I mean, for over 30-something years.
Incredible songwriter, but he was so good at recording too, wasn't he? I mean, he taught a lot of people that live here still how to record.
He was, I don't know. He was a good kid. He was a cool cat. Very cool cat.
Yeah.
I think we both have that. Being around somebody that's willing to share.
And
I'll go back to what I said to you. You had enough sense to know you didn't know what you were doing.
Oh, I did.
And most people don't know that. His age, these kids have every model number of every piece of equipment and everything it'll do and have no idea how to use it. I've never seen anything like
I still look at stuff.
Never seen anything like it.
I still look at something I might have used in 79 or 80 and go, I don't remember how that works.
Well, I look at stuff now. I'd use it, and I didn't know it'd do that.
Yeah.
You know, the hell is that? How can you imagine looking at a computer with 8,000 plugins in it?
My God.
How would you even figure out where you are? You know?
Well, okay, so here's the thing. I don't want to turn this into a slam dig fest.
Come on.
Digital is not the enemy.
No, it's not.
Digital is absolutely not the enemy.
No,
Digital
not.
is not better,
No.
and it's not worse.
Nope.
It's how you use it.
It's a tool.
Absolutely.
It's a tool.
I totally
and
agree with that.
if you learn it as a tool, then I think that you're more well-rounded and you'll get more productivity and art out of it. But to say that's not good or this and that and it's grainy and this.
No,
that's
it's crazy.
No, there's a place in the world for all of it.
But we've had 100 years to work out the sound of analog. We've had about 10 really good years to work out the sound of digital. So there's no question.
I almost think there's something, and I don't want to get on a digital slam fest here either.
That's
like
right.
you guys, there's something about it that's just inorganic, and we kind of reject it almost on an organic level, as opposed to the difference between a sine wave and a square wave. I think it's almost on that level. I think the best thing we can do with digital is capturing stuff and tremendous resolution and stuff like that. But when you get into manipulating sound too much and stuff, there's almost something there that almost, to me, almost always kind of starts to bother me if I start manipulating sound too much with it. So
Well,
I'm a little bit of an analog
that's
snob in that way.
That is a deeper foundation because, I remember when automation sort of first came out ish, and we all thought, wow, this is going to be the greatest thing in the world because it's going to cut time off of our session. We can make a record faster.
Yeah.
And all it did was just complicate it because now you can just do it 100 times or 110 times. You can just keep making passes. So those that took it and used it as a tool that used it to actually help them do things got it. And the ones that just kept making hundreds of passes didn't get it. And if you listen to those records, you can hear the got it record sounds good and the didn't got it record doesn't sound good.
Yep.
And going further into that manipulation, you start second guessing yourself. I don't care who you are and how many records you've made, you reach a point of diminishing returns working in certain formats that allow you just unlimited changes. That's not... you talk about, I started with, I guess, 8-track, 4-track, 8-track, whatever.
8-track.
So you had to do a band with you could do a band with two hands.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it sounded
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And the thing about the technology is some of the greatest rock and roll accidents, where the erase head wasn't tweaked exactly right. And it had print through or bleed through.
Yeah.
And you can hear that on records. And you can hear all kinds of things that were happy accidents that you don't really have happy accidents with dig. I don't think.
That's a great point.
Is that a
It's
fair
absolutely
statement?
true. I
Or am
agree
I
on
talking
that. That's very
above
true.
my pay
Well,
grade?
because the other thing is you can go back and fix it. We couldn't fix shit.
Well,
No.
I listened to some classic records with like Heart or something I heard the other day, and I was thinking that vocal is almost pitchy by today's standards.
Sure. Yes, it is.
Because we perfect the tuning to the point to where now
we
even
don't.
my ear,
No,
I hear
we
that and go,
Yeah.
she's a little pitchy, and she's a brilliant
we
singer.
can't
These
record.
two don't.
Yeah, we don't.
Well,
it's,
okay.
the what was it? Somebody was telling me the other day they were driving in their car and I don't know when I just mess it. They said something about I just don't know what's going on with the sound or going on with the sound. I said, well, I know what it is. I said, you've not heard a mistake.
Yeah.
There's this
That's
perfect
true.
pitch. It's gridlocked in perfect pitch, and it's like it's
What a
not
great point.
It's
Yeah.
not pleasant to listen to.
It's not.
Well, and see, there's guys like one of my favorite drummers, Ringo Starr, of course, the Beatles, has a way of his clock is constantly bouncing and moving and flexing around the grid. It's not on the grid, but it doesn't feel out of time or like he has bad time.
feels
There's
normal.
so much magic
Natural.
to that, and you just suck that right out every time you quantize a drummer. Their specific certain drummers, they're a little early on the snare, a little late on the kick, or they're a little early on the kick, and that's their feel. That's their personality.
That's what they do.
And you don't want to suck that
wrong.
out.
I love my Tears for Fears, and I love some of those things that are like that because they're just great. They're great sounding records, and they're guys that mix it totally inside the box, which is something I can't do because it's foreign to me. And they make great records. I mean,
they're great records,
fabulous records. I couldn't make them.
Yeah.
I mean, if you gave me that gear and said these are the guys that do it, do one like that, I'm like, I don't, because it's just not what I do. But the equipment that I have an expression, when people, along with the, don't let your training interfere with your job, is it's a poor carpenter that blames his hammer.
That's a great analogy. As well. You guys are full of great analogies.
I'm not going to go into a room and say, well, that sucked or this sucked, whatever. No, you just didn't know how to work around it. Mm-hmm. You've got to be able to be
work with what you have.
He has that lightning round going.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm
just whatever.
I'm just laughing.
Y'all asked me here. You didn't know what you're going to do.
I'm laughing at them like, well, they're lightning round. You have no idea. We could talk for weeks.
Yeah,
you don't have enough card in that thing.
Steve Durr, Chad Hailey. What a great pleasure to have you guys here in the chamber.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And we're so looking forward to seeing, from the chamber.
The dungeon like in New York.
Kate and Lisa from the chamber.
Yeah.
So glad you guys were here.
Thank you.
Glad.
Thank you so much for being with us.
It's been a real pleasure.
Yeah.
Did we tell you what you wanted to know?
Well, yeah, and more. We're going to have you back. We're going to have
whole
you back
lot more,
as soon as the church studio begins to develop. It's almost there, actually, right? There's some lot of tweaking inside.
Yeah, we don't know. We haven't seen it.
That's part of the reason
we went by there today, and all three of us were like
breaking
staring out the window. Stop the damn car!
That was so funny. Yeah.
Well, Teresa Knox has two of the best, and we're so glad you took some time and joined us today and just kind of talked about.
Nobody will be more enthusiastic or more excited about it than the three of us. We really are.
Thanks, guys. We
You're
appreciate
very
it.
welcome.
And thanks for joining us from the next time we'll see you from the chamber.